Look up. Not at the sky, at the rock, at what's sitting on top of it. In the Meteora Valley of central Greece, massive sandstone pillars rise straight out of the ground, each hundreds of meters tall, sheer-walled, like something the earth forced upward and never took back. And on top of them, not beside them, on top sit Byzantine monasteries, stone walls, courtyards, Eastern Orthodox monk. The first time I saw a photograph of this place, I genuinely thought it was edited, because your brain doesn't file it correctly. Rock doesn't do that. Buildings don't sit there. And the strangest part isn't the buildings. It's that people chose this not as a retreat, not for a visit, as a life. That's where we begin tonight in this 4K travel documentary mapping the world's most impossible places, the most isolated extreme homes human hands have ever built. Places quite literally not for the faint of heart. And Meteora is only the first. Out in the parched outback of South Australia, the mining town of Coober Pedy did something no town is supposed to do. It went underground. Not the people, the town itself. Homes, churches, a bar, all carved into solid sandstone to escape surface temperatures that climb into the mid-40s Celsius. Up top, the desert bakes. Down in the dugouts, life carries on in a strange, cool silence. Now, cross the Pacific. In the heart of the Sechura Desert in southwestern Peru lies Huacachina, a genuine desert oasis. Green water, palm trees, aeolian sand, dunes 100 meters high, closing in on every side. No river feeds it. No rainfall sustains it. The water simply rises from the aquifer below, and around that single pool of groundwater, people built an entire town. In the Imereti region of western Georgia, a single church balances on top of the Katski pillar, a limestone monolith slowly being eaten away by erosion. The column gets fractionally smaller with every storm. The church on top has never moved. And in the Lazio region of central Italy stands Civita di Bagnoregio, a hilltop settlement of barely a dozen residents perched on a plateau of volcanic tuff that crumbles a little more every year. Italians have a name for it, Il Paese che muore, the dying town. Not metaphor. Geological forecast. The handful of people still living there know exactly what that means. They stayed anyway. Too high, too exposed, too close to the edge. None of these isolated extreme homes made sense to build. None of them made sense to stay. And yet people did, for hundreds of years, for generations. Tonight, we go find out why. Eight kilometers off the southwest coast of Ireland, there is a rock. Not an island in the way most people imagine islands, the kind with beaches, maybe some trees, a flat place to put a tent. This is a pyramid of dark sandstone, rising almost 220 meters straight out of the Atlantic. No harbor, no shelter. The sea around it doesn't lap. It collides. On bad days, waves here reach 30 meters. That's taller than a building 10 stories high, hitting bare rock, with nothing between it and the open ocean for thousands of kilometers. Getting to the top means climbing 618 ancient stone steps. No railing. This is a pilgrimage path that runs along the cliff edge. Rock on one side, nothing on the other, just the drop and the sea below. The steps were cut by hand, by monks, sometime around the 6th century. Because that's the part that stops you cold. This wasn't a military outpost. Nobody was forced here. A small group of Christian monks chose this rock. Specific, brutal, unreachable, the place they wanted to spend their lives. At the summit, they built 6 stone huts, each shaped like an upturned boat. The stones were laid one over another until the walls leaned in and closed overhead. No mortar, nothing holding them but their own weight. An ancient monastery now, a UNESCO World Heritage Site on one of the most isolated rocks on Earth. And those huts are still standing, 1400 years later, on a rock in the middle of the Atlantic. The monks didn't just survive here, they made it a home. Soil had to be gathered and carried up. Rainwater collected off bare rock. In winter, when storms sealed the island off for weeks at a time, there was no resupply, no rescue, just the huts, the stone, and whatever they'd managed to store. Most people would call that trapped. They called it chosen. What makes Skellig Michael hard to look away from isn't the danger. It's the silence underneath everything else. You stand at the top of the mainland, just barely visible as a grey line on the horizon. The sea stretching in every other direction without interruption. This is what the edge of the world actually looks like. And you realize the monks didn't come here despite the isolation. They came because of it. The harder it was to reach, the further the world stayed away. The last monks abandoned the island around the 13th century. Nobody knows exactly why. The records are lost to time, if they ever existed. Some historians think the winters became too brutal, even by Skellig standards. Some think the church changed, and this kind of extreme solitude fell out of fashion. The huts have been empty for 800 years. They still hold. On the western edge of the Faroe Islands, the village of Gissadalur sits on a plateau about 170 meters above the ocean. Below it, the cliffs drop straight down into the North Atlantic. No beach, no gradual slope, just the edge, and then the sea. This remote village is small enough that you can walk from one end to the other in a few minutes. The houses cluster near the plateau, edge their grass rooftops, catching the spray that drifts up from the cliffs below. For most of the 20th century, the only way in or out of this isolated village was on foot, a mountain path over the ridge separating Gissadalur from the rest of the island. No road, no vehicle access. Everything that came into the village came in on someone's back: food, building materials, mail, medical supplies. If you needed a doctor, you walked. If the weather closed the path, you waited. And it does, regularly, for days at a time. A tunnel was finally blasted through the mountain in 2004. It took until 2004 for this village to get a road. The houses here have grass growing on the roofs, not as decoration. The turf acts as insulation and weight, holding the whole house down against winds that regularly exceed 100 kilometers per hour. The Faroes have been building roofs this way for 1,000 years because the alternative is watching your roof disappear into the ocean. On the worst days, the spray from the waves below carries all the way up the cliff face. The grass on the rooftops is permanently stained with salt. Just at the edge of the village, a waterfall drops off the cliff, directly into the sea. Not into a river, not into a pool. Straight off the plateau edge, 40 meters down, into open water. When the wind is strong enough, the waterfall doesn't fall at all. The water gets caught mid-air and blown back up over the village in a fine mist. The locals have seen it so many times, they don't look up anymore. That waterfall is why most people have heard of Gissadalur at all. Drone footage of it spread across the internet, and suddenly, this village became one of the most photographed places in the North Atlantic. Tour boats started coming. Day visitors arrived through the new tunnel. The village that spent a century cut off from the world became in the span of a decade a destination. Whether that's better is a question nobody here seems to have fully settled. About 70 kilometers off the southwestern tip of England, there is a lighthouse standing on a piece of granite that barely qualifies as land. The rock itself is roughly the size of a tennis court, and on it, rising 49 meters straight up, is a tower built from 6,000 tons of interlocking granite blocks. That's it. Rock, tower, ocean in every direction. The first structure built here collapsed during a storm before it was even finished. That was 1850. The current tower took another 7 years to complete, not because of the engineering, but because working on a rock that spends half its time underwater meant construction was only possible in calmer months, a few hours at a time when the sea allowed it. What engineers eventually figured out was that the tower couldn't fight the waves, it had to move with them. The granite blocks were cut with dovetail joints, each one locked into the next, like a three-dimensional puzzle, so the entire structure flexes slightly under impact instead of cracking. In the worst storms, waves have been recorded breaking over the top of the lamp room, 30 meters of water over the top of the tower. The light kept running. For over a century, lighthouse keepers lived inside that tower. 10 floors, each one a single room, the oil store at the bottom, the engine room, the watch room, the bedrooms stacked, one on top of the other, then the lamp at the top. Rotations lasted weeks. Some keepers described it as the quietest posting in England. Others described it differently. The lighthouse was automated in 1992. Nobody has lived there since. On a clear night, you can see the light from 40 kilometers away. A single white flash every 15 seconds. Nobody home. Still running. From above, it looks like someone dropped a house in the middle of the ocean and forgot about it. The island is a single block of black lava rising out of the North Atlantic. No harbor, no gradual slope, just cliff edges and a small plateau at the top where the grass holds on. And on that plateau, one white house. That's everything. Nobody knows who built it. That's not a figure of speech. The origin of the structure is genuinely unclear. Some accounts say it was a hunting cabin. Others say something else entirely. The records, if they ever existed, haven't survived. What's left is just the house still standing with no verified explanation for why it was put there in the first place. What makes it stranger? Someone lives there now. One person. On an island with no fresh water, no road, no neighbors. Someone made the choice to be here. They've set up beds for visitors, and over the years, just over 11,000 people have made the crossing to spend a night or two on the island. They come, they sleep in that small house, they leave. The one person who stays, stays. Nobody has fully explained that either. The cliffs on the southern side drop almost vertically into the water. On the northern approach, if conditions allow, a small boat can land. If conditions don't allow, which is often the island simply isn't reachable, you wait or you don't go. Elleday is the last stop in this chapter. 4 places on the edge of the sea, each one with its own version of the same question: why here? Why stay? What does a person need that only a place like this can give? Skellig Michael answered it with faith. Bishop Rock answered it with duty. Gassadalur answered it with stubbornness. Elleday doesn't answer it at all. All of those places share one thing: the rock island, the lighthouse, the village on the cliff, the house with no explanation. None of them were built for comfort. None of them made logical sense. And in every case, the people who came chose to stay, not despite the difficulty, but somewhere inside it. But there's a difference between staying somewhere hard and climbing towards something. Some people didn't just find the edge, and hold on. They looked up past the cloud line, past where roads end and ropes begin, and decided that whatever was up there was worth reaching, not for survival, not because they had nowhere else to go, because they believed the height itself meant something. There are rocks in central Greece that don't look like they belong to the landscape around them. The valley floor is flat, and agricultural fields, small roads, ordinary towns. And then, without warning, these columns rise, straight up, some of them 300, 400 meters tall sides, nearly vertical tops, worn flat by millions of years of erosion. They look less like geology and more like something deliberately placed there. In the 14th century, monks started climbing them, not to visit, to stay. The reasoning, if you can call it that, was straightforward: the higher and harder to reach, the safer. The Byzantine Empire was fracturing. Armies moved through the valley below regularly. A monastery on top of a vertical rock column was functionally a fortress that required no walls because the rock itself was the wall. Nobody was coming up uninvited. Building up there was a different problem entirely. Every stone, every beam, every barrel of water had to come up by hand, hoisted in nets, on ropes, over the cliff edge. Some of the larger monasteries took decades just to accumulate enough material to begin construction. The monks didn't see that as a problem. They had time. The rock wasn't going anywhere. For centuries, the only way up was a rope ladder or a net. You sat in the net, someone above cranked the winch, and you rose slowly, with the valley getting smaller beneath you and nothing between you and the ground except rope. When visitors asked how often the ropes were replaced, the monks reportedly answered, "When God decides it is time." Stone staircases were cut into the rock faces in the 1920s. The rope ladders came down, and Meteora, which had spent 5 centuries being genuinely unreachable, became gradually a place tourists could visit before lunch. Inside, the monasteries are smaller than they look from below. Narrow corridors, low ceilings, walls covered in frescoes darkened by centuries of candle smoke. The windows are cut directly into the rock face, and through them, the valley drops away beneath you with nothing in between. 6 monasteries still function today. Monks and nuns still live up there behind walls built by people who hauled every stone up by rope on rock faces that the valley below has been looking up at for longer than any of the buildings have existed. On mornings when the fog comes in off the valley, the columns disappear into the mist and the monasteries appear to float. No rock visible beneath them, just the buildings suspended. The monks have seen it thousands of times. They still look. The mountain rises out of a sea of cloud. Not metaphorically, the valleys around Fanjingshan sit below the cloud layer for much of the year, and the peak stands above it, so what you see from a distance is a column of rock appearing to float on white. Getting to the top means climbing somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 stone steps. The path clings to the cliff face for most of the ascent, narrow, steep, exposed. On busy days, the line of people moving upward stretches for hours. On quiet days, the mist closes in, and you can't see more than a few meters ahead. The mountain doesn't adjust its conditions for either. Near the summit, the rock formation changes. The peak splits into 2 separate columns, and connecting them at over 2,400 meters above sea level is a stone bridge barely wide enough for 2 people to pass each other. On one side of the bridge, a sheer drop into cloud. On the other side, the same. You cross it, because the temples are on the other side. That's the only reason. The two small temples at the top have stood up there for centuries, rebuilt, after fires rebuilt, after earthquakes rebuilt, after the particular kind of damage that happens when a structure spends its entire existence above the cloud line in a region that receives some of the heaviest rainfall in China. The stone is dark and permanently wet. The incense smoke from the shrines inside drifts out and disappears into the mist almost immediately. Something else lives up here. The Guizhou golden snub-nosed monkey, one of the rarest primates on Earth, found nowhere else in the world. Fewer than 750 remain. They move through the old-growth forest below the summit, a forest that has been left largely untouched because the mountain was considered sacred, long before anyone thought to log it. The monks who built the temples and the monkeys who preceded them have shared this mountain for longer than the temples have existed. The rock itself is over 1 billion years old. The mushroom rock near the summit, a formation that looks exactly as improbable as it sounds, a massive boulder balanced on a narrowing base, has been sitting there through all of it. Wind and rain carved it into that shape. The same wind and rain are still working on it now. The mountain was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2018. Before that, it was just a place people climbed to reach something they believed was worth the climb. Some of them still do it barefoot. At first, it doesn't look real. A cluster of white buildings hanging from a vertical cliff face nearly 1,000 meters above the valley floor. No road reaches it. From a distance, it looks less like architecture and more like something painted onto the mountain itself. This is Paro Taktsang Tiger's Nest, and it has been clinging to this cliff for centuries. The monastery sits high above Bhutan's Paro Valley, attached to bare granite walls that plunge almost straight down beneath it. Even today, standing on the opposite side of the valley, the first question most visitors ask is simple: how did anyone build that? According to local tradition, the story begins long before the monastery existed. In the 8th century, Guru Padmasambhava, the Buddhist master credited with bringing Buddhism to Bhutan, is said to have arrived here not by climbing, but by flying on the back of a tigress. He landed on the cliff, entered a cave, hidden within the rock, and meditated there for years. The cave became sacred. Centuries later, a monastery was built around it. The trail begins far below, among pine forests draped with prayer flags. As the climb continues, the monastery appears and disappears through the trees, always distant, always higher than expected. Then comes the final approach. A staircase descends into a rocky gorge. A waterfall crashes through the gap. Another staircase climbs back up the opposite side. Only then do visitors arrive at the monastery itself, standing face to face with the cliff that supports it. And somehow, the closer you get, the less believable it becomes. The walls seem to grow directly out of the mountain. Windows overlook empty air. Meditation caves disappear into the rock behind the temples. Few places create this feeling that humans found somewhere no building should exist and decided that was exactly where they needed to build one. Not to dominate the landscape, just to be inside it. In the middle of a small French town, a needle of volcanic rock rises 82 meters straight out of the ground, and on top of it, a church. Not a large church. The summit is too narrow for that, but a real one with an arched entrance, frescoes inside a chapel that has been in continuous use since 969 AD. Over 1,000 years of services held on top of a rock that has no business having a building on it. The column is what's left of an ancient volcano, not the cone, not the crater, but the hardened magma core that sat at the center. Everything softer eroded away over millions of years. The plug remained. When the first builders arrived in the 10th century, they didn't fight the shape of the rock. They followed it. The chapel walls curve, where the summit curves the floor plan, bends around the edges of the stone, the structure fitting itself into the space available rather than imposing a geometry from outside. To get up there, you climb 268 steps, cut directly into the rock face, spiraling around the column as it narrows toward the top. The path is old enough that the stone underfoot has been worn smooth and slightly concave by 1,000 years of pilgrims. Near the top, the steps get steeper. The town below gets smaller. By the time the arched gate at the entrance comes into view, most people stop and look back down without meaning to. San Michel de Guille sits on the route to Santiago de Compostela. For centuries, pilgrims heading to Spain passed through Le Puy-en-Velay and climbed the rock before continuing their journey. The climb was part of the journey, a thing you did before the longer thing began. In 1955, workers doing restoration found a sealed cavity in the wall. Inside, a cache of 11th century objects, reliquaries, manuscripts, devotional items that had been placed there and forgotten for nearly 900 years. Nobody had known they were there. The rock had been holding them the entire time. Every place in this chapter went up, higher than roads could follow, higher than logic recommended, higher than most people would consider sane. Faith, it turns out, has always had a preference for altitude. But not everyone looked up. Some looked down and decided that what they needed wasn't the sky. It was the earth itself, closed around them, keeping the world out. From above, it looks like the ocean swallowed a volcano, and the volcano swallowed a village. Aogashima is a small island about 360 kilometers south of Tokyo. The shape from the air is immediately strange, a large outer rim of cliffs encircling a deep bowl, and inside that bowl, a second smaller crater rising from the center. Two nested volcanic structures, one inside the other. Scientists have a term for this formation, a nested caldera. It is one of the rarest geological structures on Earth. The island is 3.5 kilometers wide. Around 170 people live here. Getting here is its own problem. There's a helicopter when weather allows, or a ferry which gets cancelled more than half the time due to rough seas. On average, travelers wait 4 days on the mainland just for the ferry to run. Some residents have missed births, funerals, emergencies because the ocean wasn't letting anyone through. The island decides when you leave, not you. In 1785, the volcano erupted. It buried the island in ash and lava. More than half the population died. The survivors paddled to the nearest island on canoes and lived as refugees for 50 years. Then they came back. Walk into the inner crater today, and the ground is warm beneath your feet. Steam rises from vents in the earth. The locals use the geothermal heat to cook wooden boxes placed over the vents. Food slow-cooked by the same volcanic system that once destroyed everything their ancestors built. They've also built a small sauna inside the caldera. The volcano is their kitchen, their bathhouse, their backyard. The village has a small local restaurant where people eat together, nothing fancy, just food and conversation inside the crater. Outside on the open road, locals sometimes dance together, holding hands in a circle, the kind of thing that happens in a place small enough that everyone already knows everyone. The green inside the crater is almost unnaturally vivid, the kind of color that makes you check if what you're seeing is real. Children grow up playing in that bowl. Below the outer cliffs, the Pacific crashes against black basalt, with nothing between it and open ocean for hundreds of kilometers. "170 people living inside an active volcano 360 kilometers from the nearest city, completely at peace with it." From the air, it looks like the surface of Mars. Red dirt, no trees, no shade craters, and holes everywhere, thousands of them, pockmarking the ground in every direction as far as you can see. Nothing about it suggests people live here. And then you notice the doors. Cut directly into the hillsides, at ground level ordinary-looking wooden doors with doormats in front of them. Behind those doors, homes. Full homes with living rooms and kitchens and bedrooms carved straight into the sandstone. This is Coober Pedy, a town of around 2,000 people in the South Australian desert, most of whom live underground. The reason is simple. Summer temperatures here regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius on the surface. The exposed ground cracks. Metal left in the sun becomes too hot to touch. There are almost no trees, nothing grows easily in this soil, and water is too scarce to waste on shade. So sometime in the early days of the settlement, people started digging inward instead of building upward. Underground, the temperature stays around 23 degrees year-round, with no air conditioning required. The desert does the work. What started as basic dugout shelters eventually became something else entirely. Coober Pedy has underground homes with multiple bedrooms, an underground church with carved sandstone walls and wooden pews, underground hotels where tourists sleep below the surface without quite knowing how to feel about it. The spaces inside are surprisingly large. The soft sandstone carves easily, so rooms can be as big as whoever digs them decides they should be. Some of the homes have been expanded over decades, room by room, deeper and deeper into the hill. The town exists because of opal. More than 70% of the world's high-quality opal comes from this ground, and the fields around Coober Pedy have been worked since around 1915. The landscape above ground tells that story clearly. Around 250,000 abandoned mine shafts scattered across the desert, most of them unfenced, some of them deep. Locals learn young which ground to trust. Tourists are warned repeatedly. The signs at the edge of town are not decorative. Over 100 years of people arriving from everywhere to dig for something valuable in the ground, the town has ended up with residents from more than 45 countries. Underground, in a Serbian-built home, next to a Greek-owned opal shop, next to an Aboriginal art gallery, the desert brought them here. The opal kept some of them. The underground kept the rest. The ground here is yellow. Not sandy yellow, chemical yellow, the color of sulfur deposits laid down over thousands of years of volcanic activity. Pools of liquid sit between the formations, green and rust red and almost fluorescent, their edges crusted with salt crystals that catch the light like broken glass. The air above them shimmers. The temperature is already past 45 degrees by mid-morning, and it keeps climbing. Dalol sits in the Danakil Depression in northern Ethiopia, more than 130 meters below sea level. It holds the record for the highest average annual temperature of any inhabited place on Earth. The pools scattered across the surface are not water, they are brine and sulfuric acid, some with a pH close to 0. Nothing swims in them. Nothing grows near the edges. The colors are produced by chemistry, not life. And yet men come here to work. Every morning, Afar salt miners arrive at the flats with their camels and their tools and begin cutting blocks of salt from the crust the same way their fathers did and their fathers before them. The salt trade has run through this depression for centuries. The work hasn't changed much. The heat hasn't changed at all. When it's time to eat, there is no restaurant, no shade structure, just open ground, and whatever they brought. One man takes a goat bare hands, no ceremony, and processes it where he stands, using his teeth, where his hands can't get purchase on the bone. Beside him, another man kneads dough on a flat surface and presses the rounds directly onto stones heated by the fire beside him. No oven, no timer. The bread comes out dark at the edges, dusted with ash, hard enough to last through a full day of labor. With the meat and glasses of black tea loaded with sugar, it's enough. It has to be. In 50-degree heat, cutting salt from the ground by hand, the body burns through everything it takes in. The food isn't about flavor. It's about staying upright until the work is done. The colors of Dalol look like something that shouldn't exist on this planet, the kind of image that stops people mid-scroll and makes them check whether it's real. It is. And when the day's work is done, the men load the salt blocks onto their camels and walk back across the flats, unhurried, quiet, the same way people have left this place for centuries. From above, it shouldn't exist. A circle of green water, sitting in the middle of the driest desert in the world, ringed by palm trees, surrounded on every side by sand dunes that rise up to 100 meters high. No river feeds it. No rain fills it. The water comes up from below through fractures deep in the rock and has been doing so for long enough that people built an entire town around it. Huacachina is about 5 kilometers from the city of Ica in southern Peru. The oasis is small. You can walk around the lake in 20 minutes. But the scale of what surrounds it makes the smallness feel extreme. Stand at the water's edge and look up walls of sand in every direction, the crests shifting slightly in the wind, the sky a hard blue above the dune line. The green of the palms against the sand is the kind of contrast that doesn't look real in photographs. Local legend says the lake was formed when a beautiful princess was surprised while bathing, fled in such haste that she left her pool behind and became a mermaid living in its depths. The ripples on the surface, some say, are her moving underneath. It's the kind of story a place like this earns. Water appearing in the middle of a desert does need some explaining. Today, the town around the lake is built almost entirely for visitors. Hostels and restaurants line the waterfront. Sand buggies tear up and down the dune faces, carrying tourists in goggles and wide grins. Sandboarders launch themselves off the crests and slide toward the water. The oasis that once offered quiet shelter in the middle of nothing has become one of Peru's most visited destinations. And the lake is shrinking. The water table that feeds Huacachina is being drawn down by agricultural irrigation in the surrounding valley, the same farms that support the towns, the same economy that brings the tourists, the same development that made the region livable. The water that has been rising through those rock fractures for centuries is being pulled out faster than it returns. The shoreline has pulled back. What was once deep enough to swim in some areas is now shallow enough to wade. The most fragile things are always the most beautiful and the most visited. These places push back. The heat, the acid, the volcano, the desert, all of it working against the people who chose to stay. The environment here isn't indifferent, it's actively hostile, and surviving it requires a kind of stubbornness that doesn't really have a name. But not every impossible place announces its hostility. Some just quietly refuse to make sense. No extreme heat, no toxic chemistry, no eruption waiting underneath. Just a house between four boulders, a church on an island nobody could reach for half the year. Strange in a different way, quieter, and somehow just as hard to explain. Four granite boulders sit on a hillside in northern Portugal. They were there long before anyone thought to build anything. And in 1974, someone looked at the gaps between them and decided that was enough. Casa do Penedo, the House of Stone, uses the boulders as its walls, not built against them, not decorated with them. The structure fills the space between four massive rocks, using their surfaces as load-bearing elements, their overhangs as partial roof. The result looks less like a house and more like something the landscape assembled by accident and then someone moved into. Step inside and the scale of the stone becomes personal. The walls don't feel like walls, they feel like the inside of something geological. Pots and pans hang from hooks driven into granite. A wooden bench sits against a rock face that weighs more than the entire rest of the structure. Sunlight comes through windows cut directly between the boulders, small, irregular, letting in just enough light to see by. The kitchen has a counter, a small cabinet, a table with chairs. Everything normal. Everything surrounded by rock that was here before humans existed. There is no electricity. There never has been. The original owner built it that way deliberately, not because power wasn't available, but because connecting to the grid would have meant acknowledging the modern world. In some way, the house was specifically designed to refuse. The granite walls absorb warmth through the day and release it slowly after dark. No insulation needed. The walls weigh thousands of tons. Outside, carved into one of the boulders, there is a pool, cut directly from the natural rock surface, not installed, not tiled, just stone, shaped into a basin. On one side, a newer pool has been added with a view across the valley. And across that valley, visible from the water's edge, wind turbines stand in a long row along the ridge, dozens of them turning slowly. A house with no electricity, looking out at a hillside, full of turbines generating power for everyone else. Casa do Penedo hides between boulders on a hilltop. That's one kind of impossible. On an island in the middle of Lake Onega in northwestern Russia, there are churches that have been standing for 300 years, built entirely from pine logs without a single iron nail. Not because nails weren't available, because the builders believed iron would cause the wood to rot faster. Every joint is cut and fitted by hand logs, notched into each other at the corners, beams locked together through tension and geometry alone. The buildings expand slightly in summer heat and contract in winter cold, the whole structure breathing with the seasons rather than fighting them. In temperatures that drop to -40 degrees Celsius, that flexibility is the difference between standing and cracking. The centerpiece is the Transfiguration Church at Kizhi Pogost, Russia, built in 1714. It has 22 domes, onion-shaped, stacked in ascending tiers, the tallest point rising 37 meters above the island. No architectural drawings survived from its construction, no records of who designed it. Just the building itself, still standing with 22 domes that somehow balance against each other without a nail holding any of it together. The roofs are steep, sharply angled shapes that rise to narrow points. The angle isn't decorative. Snow here is heavy and falls for months. A shallow roof accumulates weight until something gives. A steep roof sheds it. The builders understood physics the way people understand things, when the alternative is their building collapsing on them. What catches the eye at close range are the roof tiles. Thousands of small aspen shingles, called leme, cover the upper portions of the churches and their domes. Freshly cut aspen is pale and ordinary, but exposed to decades of northern weather, the wood oxidizes and turns a metallic silver gray, so the domes appear to shimmer in certain light, as if covered in old coins. In winter, against white snow and dark pine, the effect is something between eerie and beautiful. The craftsmanship doesn't stop at the exterior. Step inside, and every wall is covered floor to ceiling in orthodox iconography, gold and crimson, layered so densely there is almost no bare wood visible anywhere. Saints, angels, biblical scenes stacked row upon row, the gilded frames catching light from a brass chandelier hanging at the center. The floor is dark, worn wood. A bouquet of white flowers sits near the entrance. The contrast between the silence of the space and the intensity of everything covering the walls takes a moment to absorb. The island of Kiji sits in the middle of a lake that freezes solid for months. For much of history, it was reachable only by boat in summer and on foot across the ice in winter. The churches were built there anyway, not despite the isolation, but as if the isolation was the point. They've been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1990. Before that, they were just there. The ground moves when you step on it. Not from an earthquake, just the natural give of an island made entirely from reeds, layers of totora, bundled and woven and stacked until they float. Your foot sinks an inch or two with each step. The surface beneath you is alive in a way solid ground never is. Lake Titicaca sits 3,812 meters above sea level on the border between Peru and Bolivia. The name itself tells you something. In the local language, Titi means Pumacaca, means gray, the Gray Puma Lake. And scattered across its surface, more than 150 small islands built entirely by hand from the reeds that grow along its shores. The Uros people came to the water centuries ago to escape wars on the mainland, a small group of fishers and hunters who decided the lake was safer than the land. They built their territory on water where no army could easily follow. What began as survival became culture, then became home. Everything here is reed. The islands are reed, the houses are reed, the boats are reed, tall curved prow vessels made the same way for generations. The kitchen sits on a separate wooden base, so that if a fire starts, it doesn't take the whole island with it. Outside, the men play soccer on the surface, the ball rolls, but the ground gives under every step. Someone once suggested basketball. The ball doesn't bounce on reed, so no basketball. The pale inner root of the totora stem can be eaten crisp, faintly sweet, somewhere between cucumber and celery. The Uros have always eaten it. Now tourists eat it too, standing 3,800 meters above sea level chewing reed and nodding because it actually tastes fine. Step inside one of the houses and a woman will wave you in without much ceremony. On the walls, folded on shelves, spread across the floor, textiles she made herself. Bright woven cloth with geometric patterns in reds, blues, and yellows depicting the birds and lake life of Titicaca, flamingos fish, the reed boats they sail every day. Each piece is her own design, her own hands. She holds one up, points to the stitching. This is her work. The men build and repair the islands. The women weave what the lake looks like and sell it to people who've never seen anything like it. Tourism came to most islands 40 or 50 years ago. Some communities held out longer. One group only opened to visitors 5 years ago. They share everything the visitors bring, every soul earned, divided among the families who live there together. There are children everywhere on the islands. The lake doesn't feel remote when you're standing on it. It feels like a neighborhood that just happens to float. Everything in this chapter was built by hand against logic in places that had no business being lived in. A house between boulders. A church on an island no one could reach for half the year. A neighborhood floating on a lake. None of them were built to last forever. Some of them knew that from the start. The next places we go, they know it too. The difference is, the clock is already running. From across the valley, it looks like a painting someone forgot to finish. A small medieval town sitting on top of a plateau of volcanic tuff, the valley floor falling away on every side into eroded clay badlands. One narrow pedestrian bridge connects it to the outside world. That's the only way in. No road, no vehicle access. Just the bridge, the rock, and whatever is left of the town on top. The Etruscans founded this place more than 2,500 years ago. It was once a real city connected to neighboring towns by roads busy with markets and trade. Then earthquakes came, and floods, and centuries of rain working on the soft tuff beneath the buildings. Roads crumbled into the valley. Houses followed. In 1695, a major earthquake cut Civita off from the surrounding land, entirely turning it into an island of rock in the middle of a valley it used to be part of. The houses that remain are built from the same volcanic tuff. They stand on warm, yellow-brown blocks cut directly from the plateau, so the buildings seem to grow out of the rock rather than sit on top of it. Walls, doorways, archways, all the same pale amber color, darkening where centuries of weather have worked on the stone. The Italians call it La Città che muore, the dying city. It is not a metaphor. The plateau loses several centimeters of its edge every year as the tuff erodes. The town is measurably smaller than it was a decade ago. Engineers are paid using money from the entrance fee charged at the bridge to slow the process down. Nobody claims they can stop it. Around a dozen people still live here year-round. They run small restaurants and bed and breakfasts, sell gelato to the tourists who make the crossing during the day, proper Italian gelato made from local seasonal fruit, the kind you eat slowly because the walk back across the bridge can wait. Visitors sit on stone steps in the sun, holding their cones, looking out over a valley that took everything else and left only this. Somewhere on a warm step nearby, a black cat is stretched out completely unbothered. There are more cats than permanent residents in Civita. They have been here longer than the tourists and will likely be here longer than anyone. After sunset, the bridge empties. The cobblestone streets crowded an hour ago hold almost no one. The dozen people who stay do so by choice. in a town the government has classified as dying on a rock that is getting smaller every year. Nobody has fully explained why, they just do. From the sea, it doesn't look like a town. It looks like a rock. A single mass of stone rising out of the Myrtoan Sea off the southeastern coast of the Peloponnese, 300 meters wide, a kilometer long, its plateau sitting 100 meters above the water. From certain angles, the cliffs drop straight into the sea with no visible sign that anything has ever been built there. The town is hidden on purpose, carved into the rock face on the side, facing away from the open water, invisible to anyone approaching from the wrong direction. There is one way in. A narrow causeway connects the rock to the mainland, 400 meters of road across the water, just wide enough for a single car. At the end of the causeway, a tunnel cut through the base of the rock leads to the gate. Beyond the gate, medieval streets, Byzantine churches, and a town that has been continuously inhabited since the 6th century. The name Monemvasia comes directly from this geography. Monemvasia, single entrance. The name is also the entire history of the place. For 1,000 years, the single entrance was why Monemvasia survived when everything around it fell. Byzantine generals held it when the rest of Greece changed hands. Venetian merchants made it one of the great trading ports of the Mediterranean. At its peak, the population reached 40,000. Ottomans besieged it for months and took it eventually, but only because the defenders ran out of food. The rock itself was never breached. Today, around 40 people live inside the walls year-round. They run boutique hotels converted from Byzantine and Venetian mansions, thick stone walls, low ceilings, windows that look out over the sea from rooms that have held people through every empire the Mediterranean has ever produced. The main street runs from the tunnel gate to the central square, lined with small cafes and shops selling local wine and honey. In the square, the 12th century cathedral of Christus Elkomenos, Christ in chains, still stands its stone floor, worn smooth by 7 centuries of footsteps. Above the lower town, a steep path climbs to the upper plateau. Up there, the Byzantine citadel has been empty for centuries, stone walls open to the sky churches with their roofs gone wild, vegetation growing through the floors. The view from the top looks south over open Mediterranean, with nothing between the rock and the horizon. On a clear day, it feels like the edge of the world. At sunset, the stone turns. The warm amber of the walls shifts toward lavender as the light drops, the reason locals have long called it the Violet City. The cafes fill. The tourists who came for the day begin making their way back through the tunnel to the causeway. The 40 people who live here stay behind, as they always have. Inside the single entrance on a rock, the sea has been trying to reclaim for 1,600 years. In the Imereti region of western Georgia, a limestone column rises about 40 meters out of a green river valley. It doesn't look like geology. It looks like something placed there deliberately, a single vertical mass, narrower at the base than at the top, surrounded by forest on every side. On the summit, there is a church. The column is made of limestone, which means it dissolves slowly in acidic rainwater. Has been dissolving for millennia. The shape it has now, this narrow tower of rock standing alone in the valley, is what's left after everything softer eroded away. The church on top was built sometime in the 9th or 10th century. Nobody knows exactly when or how the builders got materials up there. The summit is roughly the size of a small apartment. Getting anything up at all, stone timber tools, food required hauling it by rope, vertically over bare rock. The monastery was abandoned at some point and then essentially forgotten. For centuries, the pillar sat in the valley, and nobody climbed it. Local legends built up around it, the column appearing in Georgian folklore as a place between worlds, neither fully of the earth nor the sky. The first documented modern expedition to the top wasn't until the 1940s. What the climbers found was a ruined church, a crypt used as a burial vault, and the remains of a wine cellar with large clay vessels still embedded in the rock. Someone had been making wine up there. Someone had been buried up there. The details of who and for how long are still not fully known. The monastery was restored between 2005 and 2009. A monk named Maxim now lives on the summit. He goes up and comes down by a metal ladder fixed to the rock face, the only way in or out. The public is not permitted to climb. From the valley floor, visitors can see the church on the summit, small and precise, against the sky, but nothing more. The column is still dissolving. Every rain, every winter, the limestone loses a little more of itself to the chemistry of water. The church has been up there for over 1,000 years. How much longer the rock beneath it will hold is a question nobody has answered, and that the rock itself seems to be working on slowly in its own time. The door to the seed vault closes. The tunnel goes dark. Behind 3 meters of steel and 100 meters of frozen rock, 1.3 million packets of seeds sit in silence at -18 degrees, waiting for something nobody wants to happen. That image stays with me more than most. But so does the woman on the floating island folding cloth she wove herself, setting it on the pile, and the monk in Georgia climbing his ladder every morning to a church that the rain is slowly dissolving, and the 15 people in Italy who chose to stay in a town the government said was dying. None of them are trying to be remarkable. They're just living where they live. Maybe that's what this whole journey has really been about. Not the places themselves, the edges, the craters, the pillars, the islands, but the quiet stubbornness of the people in them. The ones who looked at somewhere impossible and thought, yes, here. The world keeps turning out stranger and more inhabited than anyone expected. That never gets old. There's a house in Portugal, trapped between 4 boulders the size of buildings. No road, no power lines, no neighbors for kilometers. Someone chose to build their life in this impossible place anyway. In Italy, an entire village is collapsing off the edge of a cliff, slowly enough that people still sleep there at night, ignoring the imminent geological threat. In the Alps, climbers cross a swaying bridge over open air to reach a shelter bolted directly into a vertical wall of rock, a life suspended in the clouds, and certainly not for the faint of heart. And that's just the beginning. Over the next hour of this travel documentary, we're going to explore the world's most dangerous homes, cities built on water to escape slavery, monasteries balanced on precarious stone pillars, floating islands that are literally rotting underneath the people standing on them, and one of the most remote communities on the planet, where an active volcano forced the entire population to evacuate by boat, before most of them quietly came back. These lethal settlements were not built because they were safe. They were built because for the people living there, leaving was worse. The cable is about as thick as your wrist. That's the only thing between you and the open air below. The Bivacco Buffa di Pereiro isn't just a mountain shelter in the Italian Alps, it is one of the world's most dangerous homes for stranded climbers, built in an absolutely impossible place. It is bolted directly into a vertical cliff, accessible by a suspension bridge that sways over a fatal vertical drop with no visible bottom. Not a long drop, no visible bottom. The cables, the wooden slats, the whole structure shifts in wind. You can feel it moving under your feet before you're halfway across. And the shelter on the other side, it's not on a ledge. It's anchored deep into the unforgiving rock face, testing the absolute limits of structural integrity. 2 narrow metal rooms, small windows, no margin for anything. In strong wind, the walls vibrate. You can hear the cliff settling a sound climbers describe as the rock adjusting its weight, which is a terrifying geological reality and completely unhelpful to hear at 2 a.m. It exists because the Alps don't respect forecasts. A clear sky at noon can become a full whiteout by early afternoon temperatures, plummeting to sub-zero extremes in an hour. Visibility, zero descent, impossible. This shelter is not a luxury retreat. It is a strict survival calculation against a hostile high-altitude environment. If the mountain decides to close, this is where you wait for it to open again. People who've slept there describe a particular sound. Not wind, not their own breathing, the sound of avalanche debris passing below the shelter. Below. Which means the structure is intentionally positioned above the lethal avalanche trajectory. Which is exactly where it has to be. After that silence, the flycam drifts over the mountains of Faith in northern Portugal and finds something that takes a moment for the brain to process. A true impossible place. 4 massive granite monoliths, each one the size of a building. And wedged directly between them, one of the world's most dangerous homes. Not built near them, not built against one of them, crushed between all 4. The boulders are the structural foundation and the walls. They form part of the roof. The house sits in the gap like it grew from this extreme terrain, which is precisely what the owner intended when he built it in 1974. Total off-grid isolation, no grid electricity, rainwater collected from the stone, a small generator used sparingly. Living here is absolutely not for the faint of heart. The windows are bulletproof, not for security against people, but because boulders of this magnitude occasionally vibrate from seismic forces and extreme winds, and standard glass doesn't survive that kind of geological pressure. What visitors describe most is the sound inside, or the absence of it. The stone absorbs everything. You can hear your own breathing. The original owner eventually left, but the house still sits wedged in this hostile environment in exactly the position it's always occupied. Still intact, still silent. The rocks haven't moved. The ground here makes noise at night. Manaslu is the 8th highest mountain in the world. Base camp sits at roughly 4,800 meters. At that altitude, the air holds about half the oxygen available at sea level. Cooking takes longer. Wounds heal more slowly. Sleep is poor even on the best nights. The body is constantly working just to maintain itself. Climbers sleep in tents on glacial ice, not packed snow. Ice, the kind that shifts and settles after dark, a deep structural groan that travels up through the tent floor, through the sleeping pad, and into your back. Above base camp, Manaslu has one of the highest avalanche fatality rates of any 8,000er. Entire high camps have been erased in minutes. The mountain redirects its own debris without announcement. Every season the tents go back up. Same glacier, same ice sounds, same calculation made by a few hundred people who have decided for reasons entirely their own that this is worth it. Some of them have been here before. Some have lost people they knew on this mountain, on other mountains like it. They packed the same gear clip into the same kind of rope systems and set up camp on the same glacial ice. At night, lying in a tent at 4,800 meters, the mountain makes its sounds. The ice contracts, the glacier adjusts, the groan travels through the ground and into your body, and somewhere in that physical sensation is the knowledge that this ground is not stable, has never been stable, and will not become stable because you have chosen to sleep on it. Nobody at Manaslu Base Camp is confused about the odds. That's what makes it harder to understand, not easier. This one doesn't announce its danger. That's the point. Civita di Bagnoregio sits on top of a pillar of volcanic tufa soft rock, porous the kind you can dent with a thumbnail. For over 2,000 years, people have lived up here. They built a church homes with cellars gardens. They made this small plateau into a functioning community. And the plateau is dissolving. Every year, the edges fall away. Streets that existed a generation ago don't exist anymore. Houses have slipped off the edge, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily in the way that anything loses to erosion over enough time. There is one way in and out, a single pedestrian bridge, 300 meters long, connecting the dying village to the main town below. Around 5 to 10 people still live there year-round. The number decreases. There's a saying locals repeat, "What Civita loses, it does not get back." Nobody argues with it. built in 491 CE, still standing. The Xuankong Temple is attached to a cliff in Shaanxi Province, not at the summit, not at the base, but sideways into the middle of the rock face. Wooden beams driven into the stone. Notches carved directly into the cliff. For most of its history, the support structure was hidden. Visitors from the Tang dynasty walked beneath it and could not understand what held it up. They assumed the gods were involved. From a distance, the temple looks impossible halls and bridges suspended above a riverbed, surrounded on all sides by vertical rock. Up close, it's precise. The cliff above provides a natural overhang that deflects rain. The gorge below had been carved to a depth that made flooding minimal. The position wasn't luck, it was engineering. It has survived 15 centuries of earthquakes that flattened larger structures on flat ground. What the builders understood, and what we tend to underestimate, is this: the cliff was not the danger. The cliff was the shelter. Now the ground itself is the threat. El Alto sits on the edge of a canyon above La Paz. Some of its neighborhoods don't end at the cliff. They extend over it, houses built directly onto soil that is actively fracturing, crumbling, sliding into the gorge below. Every year, pieces of these neighborhoods simply disappear. The authorities have told the residents to leave. Some have, many haven't. But what's happening in El Alto is not stubbornness. It's something more complicated. Aymara shamans live in these edge houses. They perform rituals to Pachamama, Mother Earth, directing how water flows through the soil, reading the land's behavior, maintaining what they believe is a pact between the living and the ground. To leave is to break that pact. To leave is to abandon an agreement that has kept their families here for generations. So every night, they sleep on a physical fault line, not out of ignorance, out of a faith that gravity alone doesn't understand. The sandstone columns of central Greece don't look like mountains. They look like something that grew upward from flat ground and simply stopped at different heights, dozens of them standing separately, each one a vertical pillar with a flat summit, barely large enough to hold a building. Starting in the 14th century, monks built monasteries on top of these columns. For the first several hundred years, the only way up was by rope and basket monks hauling themselves and all their supplies by hand or being hauled by those above. There was no path. There was no staircase. There was a rope. The isolation was not incidental. The Byzantine world was collapsing, Ottoman expansion, political disintegration, violence moving through the lowlands. The columns weren't a destination. The separation was. Up here, the rope could be pulled up after you. The world below could not follow. Today, 6 monasteries are still active, Staircases have been cut into the rock. Tourists come by the million. But stand at the edge of one of those summits before the crowds arrive. Look at the other columns rising around you, each one carrying something old and human. And you understand, without anyone explaining it, exactly why they climbed up and didn't come down. The world's problems look exactly as they should from 400 meters. Small, distant, quiet. "3,000 feet above the Paro Valley floor, attached to a rock face that is for practical purposes vertical. Paro Taksang wasn't designed for convenience. It was designed as a filter. The climb takes hours thin air, steep switchbacks legs that stop cooperating somewhere around the halfway point. That exhaustion is not a design flaw. It is the architecture. You do not arrive at the tiger's nest without leaving a portion of your physical strength on the trail. That's the requirement. That's the price. The temple traces its sacred roots to the 8th century, when a Tibetan master is said to have meditated in the cliff cave for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, and 3 hours. The monastery built around that cave has been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times by fire, by time, by the mountain's own indifference. Each time it came back. Up here, the air is cold enough that breath is visible. The drop below the outer wall is absolute. The silence after the wind drops is the kind of silence that has weight. No rock here, no ice, no altitude, just water-warm flats stretching in every direction under a West African sky. Ganvi is built on Lake Nokoué in southern Benin. Approximately 30,000 people live there. The houses are on stilts. The streets are waterways. Children learn to paddle before they learn to walk on land. The market operates from canoes. Vendors drifting between customers, no transaction requiring anyone to step onto solid ground. The city was founded in the 17th century for one reason: survival. The Dahomey Kingdom was supplying enslaved people to European traders, but their religious code prohibited crossing water to take captives. The lake was a legal boundary, so the Tofinu people moved onto it. The name Ganvi translates roughly as "we survived." All of it, the schools, the churches, the clinics, the repair shops, all of it built on stilts, accessed by boat, began as a refusal to be taken. That origin is not a historical footnote. It is still the foundation. Literally and otherwise. Now the floor becomes uncertain. Lake Titicaca sits at over 3,800 meters above sea level in the Andes, the highest navigable lake on Earth. The Uros Islands are not rock. They are not earth. They are constructed from totora reeds, the same reeds that grow across the lake's surface, cut, layered, and compressed until they form a mat dense enough to support a house, a family, a life. The top layers decompose within weeks. Fresh reeds are constantly added as the old layers rot below. An island is roughly 2 meters thick in total, but the composition is always shifting. Underneath your feet, things are always breaking down. Walking on a Uros island is subtle. It doesn't rock like a boat. It gives a slight softness, a suggestion of movement, as if the ground has simply decided not to be fully solid. Some visitors find it unsettling. Others stop noticing after a few minutes. The communities originally built on the water to maintain distance from the Inca Empire. The lake was strategic before it became cultural. Now it is both. The islands can catch fire from cooking. Fire on a reed platform moves fast. Someone is always watching. A bucket is always close. There is no such thing as relaxing completely on a Uros island. The water is always under you. The reed is always slowly going. Koh Phangan is a fishing village in Phang Nga Bay, built on stilts beside a sheer limestone cliff that rises directly from the water. About 1,700 people live there. The cliff makes expansion in one direction impossible. The bay limits the other. So the village expanded the only way it could outward, over water. In the 1980s, a group of boys from the village became obsessed with football. They had no flat ground. They built a pitch anyway, salvaged wood extended from the edge of the village, over the open bay. The platform shifted underfoot. Balls went into the water constantly. The boys played anyway. They entered a national youth tournament. They reached the semi-finals. The pitch at Koh Phangan is still over the water, still partially over the bay. The story has been told so many times, it's close to legend, and legend's smooth edges. But the pitch is real. The village is real. And the instinct behind both of them, we don't have what we need, so we'll make it that's real too. When the land won't give you a place to farm, you invent one. Inle Lake in Myanmar holds thousands of teak stilt houses communities stretched across the water on posts driven into soft mud, some of them extending so far from the shore that the shoreline itself is no longer visible. But the houses are only part of what's happening here. The gardens are the stranger thing. The people of Inle Lake took layers of dead floating weeds, the kind that accumulate on any still water, and rot, packed them together, anchored them loosely to the lake bed with bamboo stakes, and built buoyant agriculture. They grow tomatoes, squash flowers, vegetables directly on the water that surrounds them. The gardens move with the current. They are tended from flat-bottomed boats. They are, by any reasonable engineering standard, not supposed to work. But the lake is a brutal foundation. Water levels shift dramatically through the year. Storms move in without much lead time, and the teak stilts holding up the entire community are in a constant silent negotiation with decay water working on wood year after year, the way water always wins eventually. Living here means accepting that your home is rotting from the bottom up incrementally all the time. Families replace stilts when they fail. They rebuild sections after storms. They add new reed layers to the gardens when the old ones sink too deep. The work of maintaining a life on Inle Lake is not occasional maintenance. It is the work itself, continuous physical, without end. And they plant new gardens anyway. If you looked at this mountain in the 12th century, you would think it was completely empty. You would be dead wrong. Get closer, and the holes become doorways, corridors, staircases carved directly into stone. Varzea is a city built inside Erosheti Mountain in southern Georgia, roughly 6,000 rooms across 13 levels, connected by tunnels, galleries, and passages that took decades to cut by hand. Queen Tamar ordered its construction in the 12th century. The purpose was military concealment. An entire population could shelter here, while an army outside saw nothing but cliff. The entrance was hidden. The city was invisible. An earthquake in the 13th century destroyed a large section of the outer rock face, exposing what had been hidden. The carved rooms open to the sky, now half excavated, became visible for the first time since they were built. Some still have their wine cellars, jars embedded directly into the floor, the same technique still used in Georgian wine production today. Georgia has been making wine for at least 8,000 years. The cellars of Varzea were cut deep enough to hold temperature year-round. The city was built to disappear. For a century, it worked. Then the mountain shook, the wall came down, and Varzea became exactly what it was built to prevent being visible. Near the Chechen border, in a valley the mountains seem to want to keep closed, there is a village made entirely of towers. Not a village with a tower. Not a village near towers. a village where the towers are the houses, medieval stone structures, 4 to 6 stories tall, built flush against each other, so the whole settlement forms a single defensive mass. There are no windows at ground level. Entry is through openings on the second floor, reached by ladders that could be pulled up and hidden. The mountain border was violent for centuries. Raids came from multiple directions without warning. Shatili was built to be retreated through floor by floor. If the enemy took the ground level, you went up. If they took the second floor, you went up again. A tower was simultaneously a last resort and a first home. Today, Shatili's permanent winter population is a few dozen, perhaps fewer. The old towers stand beside newer houses. The newer houses have windows at ground level. Stand in Shatili in autumn, the slopes turning the towers dark against the trees, and you feel the logic of a community that built its entire architecture around one question. How long can we hold? The volcano plug rises roughly 200 meters from the flat plain around Mount Popa in Myanmar. On top of it, a gold-painted monastery. To reach it, 777 steps, covered lined with shrines, climb the exterior from base to summit. But the steps aren't empty. Hundreds of macaque monkeys have lived on this mountain for generations. They move through the pilgrims without deference, take food, if left unattended, watch visitors with a calm that reads as territorial. They were here before the current structure. They know it. In Burmese tradition, Taung Kalat is home to Nat spirits, supernatural presences, requiring acknowledgement and respect. Offerings are left at specific points along the ascent. Prayers are said in particular places. What separates this place from the cliff temples and frozen shelters of the previous hour is the energy. It's not silent, not eerie. It's loud, layered, colored, alive vendors and pilgrims and monkeys and incense all occupying the same narrow stairway at the same time. And then you reach the summit. You step out onto the platform. The plain spreads out below in every direction. And the noise of the ascent drops away completely. The mountain made you work for it, and then it gave you something the climb didn't prepare you for. Deep in the karst mountains of Gwiju province, where the landscape breaks into formations that resist easy description, there are villages that cannot be reached by road. Not difficult to reach by road, physically unreachable by road. Full stop. The Miao and Dong communities of this region, built on ledges in valleys sealed on 3 sides by vertical rock, at elevations that made conventional agriculture nearly impossible and contact with the outside world entirely seasonal. Stone houses, hand-cut terraces, narrow paths that fold back on themselves down cliff faces that would stop most people from descending, let alone carrying supplies up. Some of these settlements were cut off for months every winter, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. The path disappeared under ice and mud. The village disappeared from the outside world. The terraces cut below the ridge are overgrown, but unmistakable. Someone worked this soil for generations. The stones of the walls were carried up here one by one and placed with deliberate care. The view from the ridge is extraordinary. Whether that was the point or simply a consequence, it's impossible to say. Someone chose this ridge, built on it, lived here long enough to build a hearth terrace, a hillside where a path into the stone. And then they left, without leaving an explanation. The path up has mostly grown back into the mountain. The ridge doesn't offer one. It doesn't look like a shelter. It looks like something that got lost on its way to a design exhibition and ended up on a cliff in the Mont Blanc Massif. Rifugio Gervasuti is a futuristic pod, silver narrow, two connected sections, anchored to rock at nearly 2,800 meters. It runs on solar power. It sleeps a small number of climbers. In winter, it can be completely buried under snow for weeks. The designers didn't want to build something that pretended the mountain wasn't hostile, so they made something that looked like it had accepted hostility, designed specifically to sit exposed on rock in one of the most extreme mountain environments in Europe and simply continue to function. There is a visitor book inside. People who have sheltered there through multi-day storms write in it. Most entries are short. One line, sometimes just a date and a name. That's all you need when the mountain has been talking for 3 days straight and you're not sure when it's going to stop. In May 2024, a glacier above the Swiss village of Blatten began to move. Authorities detected it early enough to evacuate most residents. They watched from below as ice and rock came through the lower section of their town. Not everything was destroyed, but the village was changed permanently. Sections gone. The landscape around it altered in ways that won't reverse. What happened next is the part that keeps researchers interested. Within months of the event, residents were already asking about returning. Not all of them, but enough that local officials had to confront the question in public: at what point does the risk become unacceptable? What is the threshold? Who decides? There is no clean answer. There never is. The mountains around Blatten are still there, still glaciated, still beautiful. The ice is still there too, holding its position, for now waiting for a temperature change that hasn't arrived yet. The residents who came back know this. They came back anyway. Millions of years ago, volcanic eruptions buried this part of central Turkey under deep layers of ash. The ash compressed into tufa soft rock, carvable with hand tools. Over centuries, wind and water worked through it and left behind tall cones rising from the valley floor, each one narrowing toward the top, some capped with harder stone that protected the layers below. They are called fairy chimneys. They look like nothing else on Earth. People carved homes into them over 1,000 years ago. The interior temperature stayed constant year-round, regardless of what was happening outside. Gurami is eroding. The same process that built the fairy chimneys is still running. Wind-water microns per year, patient and ongoing. Some formations visible in photographs from decades ago no longer exist. The ones that remain are thinner, tapering toward their own disappearance. The cave rooms are still occupied, some as hotels now, the kind of place a travel magazine might describe as boutique. The rock underneath doesn't care what the reviews say. It keeps getting smaller. There is a settlement in the South Atlantic Ocean, 2,400 kilometers from the nearest land, with no airport, no regular transport, and roughly 250 permanent residents. Tristan da Cunha is the most remote permanently inhabited place on Earth. Supply ships come when the weather allows. The sea often doesn't. The settlement is called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. It has a pub, a post office, a school, a small hospital. Life here is not primitive. It is simply very far from everything else. In 1961, the volcano erupted. Every single resident was evacuated to England. For 2 years, they lived in a country with warm houses, grocery stores, easy travel, and immediate connection to the wider world. England offered them everything that Tristan withheld. Most of them came back. The British government found this genuinely difficult to understand. Researchers studied the decision. What emerged in interviews was not romance or stubbornness. It was something more specific the residents understood, Tristan da Cunha. They knew its ocean patterns, its weather rhythms, the behavior of the volcano before and after eruption. They were experts in their own home. England was comfortable. But it wasn't theirs. The volcano is still active. The 250 people are still there. There is a word that gets used too often for places like these: brave. As if choosing to live somewhere difficult is a single decision made once from a position of complete freedom. It almost never works that way. The Tofinu people of Ganvi moved onto the water to escape being taken. The monks of Meteora climbed to summits to escape a world that had become genuinely dangerous. The towers of Shatili were built because building without walls had already been tried and it hadn't worked. The shamans of El Alto stayed on a fault line because leaving would have meant abandoning an agreement they had kept for generations. What looks from the outside like defiance of nature, it usually started somewhere much simpler: survival, faith, the specific absence of better options. And then over time, something changed in almost every case. The water wasn't just where the Euros lived. Children grew up not knowing how to walk on solid ground. The cliff wasn't just where the monks prayed. The climb became what made the prayer feel earned. The place stopped being the solution and started being the reason. When the people of Tristan da Cunha came back from England, when they chose a known volcano over a comfortable country, they weren't making an irrational decision. They were saying something precise about what home actually means. Not safety, not ease, not the absence of risk. Something that turns out to be much harder to describe and much harder to leave. These 20 places were built at the limits of what's sustainable, at the edge of what the ground will hold. And the people who built them, who live in them, who stay in them when every reasonable argument says otherwise. They are not extremists, not adventurers, not cautionary tales. They are people who found somewhere that asked everything of them and decided that was the right kind of place to call home. You have seen the extreme travel videos, active war zones, radioactive ghost towns, death road cliffside drives. But what if I told you that the most impossible places on Earth are not on any dark tourist's feed? They are not on the first page of Google. Most of us will live our entire lives without ever knowing these places exist. Today, we are going to visit 10 places that will make you question everything you thought you knew about this planet. Some of them are built inside active volcanoes where the ground is literally cooking. Some are trapped in total darkness for months, surrounded by more polar bears than people. Some are carved into cliffs that should have collapsed 1,000 years ago or buried deep underground to escape deadly heat. And one of them, the last one on this list, is a completely isolated jungle village where the dead are still treated as part of the living community. Stay until the end, because what we save for last is the one that will change how you see the world. Let us begin. Look at this island on a map. It is just a tiny dot in the Pacific Ocean, about 360 kilometers south of Tokyo. Easy to miss, easy to ignore. But zoom in. What you see will stop you cold. Aogashima is not just an island. It is a volcano inside a volcano. A smaller volcanic cone sits right in the center of a larger caldera, a bowl-shaped crater formed after the bigger volcano collapsed in on itself. It is one of the rarest geological formations on Earth. Scientists call it a nested caldera. Most people just call it impossible. The island is only 3.5 kilometers wide. Around 170 people live here. That is fewer people than most apartment buildings. To get here, you have two choices: a helicopter that only flies when weather allows, or a ferry that gets cancelled more than half the time because of rough seas. On average, travelers spend 4 days stranded on the mainland, just waiting for the ferry to run. And why would anyone want to live here? In 1785, the volcano erupted. It buried the island in ash and lava. More than half the population died. The survivors paddled to the nearest island on canoes and lived as refugees for 50 years before coming back. They came back. They always come back. Walk into the inner crater today, and the ground is warm under your feet. Steam rises from vents in the earth. The locals use the geothermal heat to cook food. They built a small sauna inside the caldera. They have turned an active volcanic system into their kitchen. The green inside the crater is so vivid, it almost hurts to look at. Below, the ocean crashes against black cliffs with a sound like distant thunder. 170 people living inside a volcano 360 kilometers from the nearest city, and they are completely at peace with it. But if Aogashima is a place where humans have made peace with a volcano, then our next destination is where humans have decided to survive in total absolute darkness for months at a time. This is the northernmost town on Earth with a permanent population. Let that sink in. People live here, permanently, by choice. Longyearbyen sits on the island of Svalbard, deep inside the Arctic Circle. The population is about 2,300 people. The nearest city of any size is over 1,000 kilometers away. From October to February, the sun does not rise, not once. 4 months of total darkness, no sunrise, no sunset, just a permanent blue-black sky and the cold. The winter temperature regularly drops below minus 20 degrees Celsius. Wind makes it feel like minus 40. Here is the detail that will stop you in your tracks. There are more polar bears on Svalbard than there are people. Around 3,000 bears roam this island. When you leave town, you are legally required to carry a rifle. Not recommended, required by law. Because outside the settlement boundary, you are in their territory. And yet people here do not seem afraid. They ski under the northern lights. They go snowmobile tours across glaciers that stretch as far as the eye can see. In summer, when the sun never sets and the midnight light turns everything gold, they say, there is no more beautiful place on Earth. The town has no homeless people, not because of any policy, but because no one would survive a winter night outside. The community takes care of each other out of simple necessity. There is one more rule in Longyearbyen that will make you think. You cannot be buried here. The permafrost preserves bodies so well that scientists discovered Spanish flu virus still intact in bodies buried here in 1918. So the dead must be flown south for burial. If you are going to die in Longyearbyen, you have to plan for it. The most isolated town in the world, surrounded by polar bears, buried in darkness for half the year. And people call it home. But darkness above ground is one thing. What if an entire town decided to live below it? The temperature here hits 50 degrees Celsius in summer. The landscape looks like the surface of Mars. Red, dry, cracked earth as far as the eye can see. No trees, almost no shade. So the 1,700 people who live here made a logical decision. They moved underground. Welcome to the dugout town. Cuba Pedy is famous for one thing: it produces more than 70% of the world's opals. Beautiful rainbow-colored gemstones worth tens of thousands of dollars per kilogram. People started mining here in 1915, and they never stopped. But miners quickly learned that the Australian summer was unbearable. Tents and wooden shacks were useless, so they dug into the soft sandstone hillsides and built their homes underground. Today, the underground homes are not primitive shelters. They are full houses, living rooms, kitchens, bedrooms. Some have multiple stories going down instead of up. The temperature inside stays at a perfect 23 degrees Celsius all year, no air conditioning needed. There are underground hotels, underground churches, even an underground bar. Tourists come from all over the world to sleep in a hole in the ground and wake up feeling completely comfortable. Above the surface, the land is scattered with white mounds of excavated rock. From the air, it looks like a moonscape. From the ground, it looks like the end of the world. Here is the dark side. The town sits on top of a minefield of old unmarked tunnels. Every few years, someone drives their car into a pit. Signs everywhere warn visitors not to walk after dark. The ground could open up beneath you at any step. A town built on treasure, sitting on top of a maze of holes, baking under a sun that wants to kill you. And the people who live here would not trade it for anything. But if Cuba Pedy is defined by what lies below the surface, our next destination is defined by what floats above it. At 3,812 meters above sea level, this is the highest navigable lake in the world. Navigable means ships can sail on it. Real ships. On a lake that sits almost 4 kilometers above sea level on the border between Peru and Bolivia. The air here is so thin that first-time visitors feel dizzy within hours of arriving. Headaches, shortness of breath, nausea. The locals call it altitude sickness. The Andean people call it a welcome. But the altitude is not what will take your breath away. Floating on this lake are over 100 man-made islands. They are called the Uros Islands. They are built entirely from totora reeds, a thick, buoyant plant that grows naturally in the lake. The islands are layered reed upon reed, sometimes several meters thick. They float like giant natural rafts. When the bottom layer rots, a new layer is added on top. People have lived on these floating islands for centuries. Today, about 1,200 people still live on the Uros Islands. Their homes are made from reeds. Their boats are made from reeds. They cook on reeds. They eat parts of the reeds.
I kind of love it. Is it healthy? Good for you?
When they need to expand an island, they add more reeds. When a section wears out, they patch it. The islands literally need constant maintenance just to keep existing. Step onto one, and you feel the ground bounce slightly beneath your feet, like standing on a sponge. The Uros people originally moved to the lake to escape the Inca Empire. The lake was their refuge, their fortress. Enemies could not easily reach them on the water. Over generations, the water became their home. There is a story about a visiting journalist who asked an elder why his people continued to live this way in the modern age. The elder looked at him for a long moment and said, "We live on water because water gave us freedom. Can your city say the same?" Hard to argue with that. But if the Uros Islands represent humans building their world from scratch, then our next destination represents something different entirely, humans daring to build where no building should stand. Datong Shaanxi Province. A cliff face rises steeply beside a narrow gorge. The rock is dark grey, almost black. The gorge below is dry most of the year, but when the rains come, it floods violently. Carved directly into this cliff, 75 meters above the valley floor, is a temple. Not carved into the rock like a cave, built onto the surface of the cliff. Wooden corridors and halls hanging in open air, connected by narrow walkways, with nothing but a straight drop below. This is the Xuankong Temple, known in the West as the Hanging Temple. It was built over 1,500 years ago, during the Northern Wei dynasty. Let that number sit for a moment. Over 1,500 years. It has survived earthquakes, floods, wars, and dynasties rising and falling, and it still hangs there. The main supporting structure is a series of wooden poles driven directly into holes cut into the cliff. Engineers who have studied the design say the poles are only partially weight-bearing. The real secret is the way beams are inserted deep into the rock, essentially using the cliff itself as the skeleton of the structure. The temple is dedicated to 3 religions simultaneously: Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, sharing space inside the same building. In a world where religions have started wars, this small cliff temple has been hosting all 3 for 1,500 years without incident. Here is the detail that most tourists miss. The temple was built high on the cliff, not because of spiritual symbolism, but for a very practical reason: flood protection. The original builders surveyed the gorge and calculated the highest floodwater line ever recorded. Then they built above it. The engineering worked. The temple has never been flooded in 1,500 years. But standing on its narrow walkways, 75 meters above the valley, gripping a wooden railing that was last replaced 200 years ago, you do not think about engineering. You think about how thin the line is between human brilliance and pure madness. But what if I told you there is a place where entire monasteries were not built on cliffs, but on top of natural stone pillars that shoot hundreds of meters straight into the sky? Imagine giant fingers of rock pushing up from a flat plain. Not hills, not mountains, columns, cylinders of solid stone, some over 400 meters tall, standing alone in the landscape like something placed there deliberately by a force that does not think in human scale. That is Meteora. There are 24 of these rock pillars in the Thessaly region of central Greece. Scientists believe they were formed by a combination of tectonic activity and erosion over millions of years. The rock is sandstone and conglomerate, hard enough to stand, but just soft enough for humans to carve into. And carve they did. On top of these pillars, on the flat or slightly rounded summits, hundreds of meters in the air, monks built monasteries. 6 of them still function today. They have been there since the 14th century. The first monks who climbed these rocks did not have stairs. They used rope ladders and nets. Supplies were hauled up in baskets. In an emergency, If someone was sick or injured, they went into the basket and prayed the rope held. The monks chose these pillars deliberately. They wanted to be closer to God, yes, but they also wanted to be unreachable. During wars and invasions, the monasteries on the pillars survived when everything below was destroyed. The height was not a challenge, it was armor. Today, stairs are carved into the rock. Tourists can visit the monasteries and stand at windows, looking out over a landscape that does not look entirely real. On clear mornings, clouds sometimes sit below the summits. The monasteries appear to float above the earth, entirely detached from the world below. Monks still live there, pray there, sleep there. 600 years of unbroken prayer suspended in the sky. Stand at the base of one of these pillars and look up. The scale is violent. It makes you feel small in a way that is not frightening, but strangely comforting, as if being reminded of your size is actually a relief. But Meteora, for all its impossible beauty, has stairs and tour buses and gift shops now. Our next destination has none of that. In fact, getting there at all may be the most dangerous part of the journey. Pull up a map of Yunnan province in southwest China. Find the county of Yanjin. Now zoom in on the Guan River Valley. What you see is a narrow gorge so deep and so vertical that the bottom is always in shadow. The walls on both sides rise nearly straight up. And sitting at the bottom of this gorge, wedged into the only flat strip of land along the riverbank, is a city. A real city, with a population of around 120,000 people. Yanjin is officially the narrowest county seat in China. The widest point of the inhabited area is just 300 meters. Some streets are barely wide enough for a single car. Buildings on both sides of the main road almost touch at the upper floors. The city is in effect a single long corridor along a river. There is no room to expand sideways, so Yanjin expanded up. Buildings are unusually tall for a small Chinese city, stacked as high as the slope allows. Elevated roads wind along the cliff faces. Bridges leap across the river at multiple heights. To leave the city, you drive through tunnels or over bridges that look like they were designed by someone with a very dark sense of humor. The road that connects Yanjin to the outside world runs along cliff edges, over suspension bridges, through rock tunnels barely wide enough for a bus. There is a school here, a hospital, a courthouse, a shopping district, all compressed into a strip of land between two vertical walls of stone. People here are born, grow up, get married, have children, grow old, and die in a space that most cities would devote to a single large park. And they do not seem to mind. One resident, asked by a journalist why he stayed, laughed and said, "Where would I go? Out there is too wide. I would get lost." China has hundreds of cities. Only one looks like it was squeezed into existence by accident. But as extreme as Yanjin is in terms of geography, our next destination takes isolation to a completely different level, not trapped between cliffs, but surrounded by thousands of kilometers of impenetrable jungle. This is the largest city in the world that cannot be reached by road. Read that again slowly. The largest city on Earth with no road access. Iquitos has around 500,000 people, 500,000. It has banks, hospitals, universities, shopping malls, a football stadium, and a busy waterfront. It has restaurants and nightclubs and traffic jams. You cannot drive here from anywhere. The Amazon jungle surrounds Iquitos on every side. The rivers and wetlands that extend outward are so complex and so vast that no road has ever been built connecting Iquitos to the Peruvian highway network. The nearest road-connected city is hundreds of kilometers away, and the terrain between them defeated every engineering attempt in the 20th century. Iquitos, you fly, or you take a slow boat down the Amazon River, which can take days from the nearest road-accessible town. Everything that comes into Iquitos comes by air or by river. Every piece of construction material. Every car. Yes, there are cars, they were shipped in by river. Every industrial machine. Every shipment of medicine or food. All of it traveling by river or sky. And yet Iquitos is a city that feels alive in a way that is hard to describe. The waterfront called the Malecón is lined with old colonial buildings painted in bright colors. Motorcycles zip through narrow streets. Vendors sell fried fish and cold beer beside the river, where pink river dolphins surface a few meters away. Pink river dolphins in a city of 500,000 people. That is the Amazon. Iquitos was once one of the wealthiest cities in South America. In the 1800s, it was the center of the rubber boom. Wealthy rubber barons built ornate mansions, tiled with Portuguese azulejo ceramics, those blue and white decorative tiles that still stand on the main square. Then, the rubber market collapsed. The roads never came, and Iquitos became what it is today, a 500,000-person city floating in a sea of green. Utterly cut off, utterly alive. And speaking of cities that cling to impossible positions, there is a village in Spain that has been sitting on the edge of a cliff for so long that the cliff has become the village. In the volcanic region of Garrocha, in the northeast of Spain, two rivers have been carving through a basalt plateau for hundreds of thousands of years. Over time, their erosion cut away the land, until what remained was a narrow basalt spur, a long, thin strip of rock jutting out from the plateau like the prow of a ship. The cliff drops 50 meters on both sides, almost vertically. The spur is barely 50 meters wide in some places. On this spur, about 1,000 people built a village. Castellfollit de la Roca is considered one of the most beautiful and most improbable villages in all of Spain. The buildings are constructed directly from the same dark basalt as the cliff. From a distance, it is almost impossible to tell where the cliff ends and the village begins. The structures appear to grow organically from the rock, as if the stone itself decided to become architecture. The oldest parts of the village date back to the medieval period. For centuries, people lived here because the position was defensible. The cliffs made it nearly impossible for attackers to approach. The village was a natural fortress. The tallest buildings stand right at the edge of the cliff. Their foundations are the cliff face itself. Residents in these buildings can open a window and look straight down 50 meters to the riverbed below. No fence, no barrier, just open air and the confidence that the stone that has held for centuries will hold one more day. There is a bell tower at the tip of the spur, the highest point of the village, that has been standing for over 800 years. 800 years on the edge of that drop. Walk through the narrow streets in the evening, when the light turns amber and the stone glows warm, and you understand why people stayed. It is not stubbornness. It is not habit. It is love for a place so beautiful and so strange that leaving it would feel like losing a part of yourself. We have visited islands inside volcanoes, towns in perpetual darkness, cities in gorges, temples on cliffs, villages on the edge of the abyss. But our final destination is different from all of them. It is not extreme in temperature or geology or architecture. It is extreme in one thing only: time, and the way time moves here, or rather, the way it does not move at all. There are no roads to Wairebo. You fly to the island of Flores, one of the 17,000 islands that make up Indonesia. Then you drive for several hours on mountain roads. Then you park the car and you walk through dense jungle, up a trail that gains over 1,000 meters in elevation. The hike takes around 4 to 5 hours, depending on your fitness. And then the jungle opens. And they're sitting in a bowl-shaped valley at 1,200 meters above sea level, surrounded by forested peaks on all sides. You see something that stops your breath completely. 7 cone-shaped houses arranged in a circle. These are Mbaru Niang traditional houses of the Manggarai people. They have 7 floors. The walls are thatched with palm fiber, tied with rattan, in a pattern that has been used for hundreds of years. The roofs come to a sharp point and are so steep that rain sheets off them instantly. Inside each floor serves a different purpose, the lowest for living, the upper floors for storage and sacred objects. The village of Wairebo has existed for over 1,200 years. 1,200 years. The Roman Empire was still standing when the first Mbaru Niang was built here. About 600 people live in Wairebo today. They grow coffee on the slopes around the village, one of the finest coffee varieties in Indonesia. They fish. They weave traditional cloth called songket with patterns that have been passed down through generations without a single written instruction. The village has no electricity grid. There is now a small solar panel for basic lighting, but nothing else. No internet, no television. The children learn in a small village school, and many go down the mountain for secondary education, and then remarkably, many come back. They come back because Wairebo asks something important of you: to sit with it. A traveler who made the 4-hour hike described arriving in the late afternoon when light hit the valley just before sunset. The smoke from cooking fires rose from the cone rooftops. Children ran between the houses. The air smelled like wet earth and coffee. And she said everything became very quiet inside her. Silent, quiet, different thing. In that moment, she said all the noise she had been carrying, schedules, notifications, deadlines, the constant low-level hum of modern life just stopped. Because Wairebo does not care about any of that. It was here 1,200 years ago, doing exactly what it is doing now. And in 500 years, if the world allows it, it will still be here. The 2012 UNESCO Award for Excellence in the Conservation of Cultural Heritage went to Wairebo for the restoration of its traditional houses. The award was accepted by a village that the judges had to hike 4 hours through jungle to reach. There is a custom in Wairebo when visitors arrive. Before you enter the village, you must participate in a welcoming ceremony called the Penti. You offer betel nut and speak a greeting to the ancestors of the village, not to the living residents, to the ancestors. Because in Wairebo, the dead are not gone. They are still part of the community, still present, still consulted. That worldview that the past and the present live together in the same space is woven into every rooftop, every thread of songket cloth, every word passed down through 1,200 years. The modern world is obsessed with what is new, what is next, what is coming. Weibo has no interest in that question. It knows something we seem to have forgotten, that the most important things are not ahead of you. They are already here. 10 places, a volcano inside a volcano, a city of darkness, a town buried underground, a lake in the sky, a temple that should not exist, monasteries in the clouds, a city compressed into a canyon, a city that no road will ever reach, a village clinging to a cliff for 800 years, and a village in the jungle that has been teaching the same lesson for 12 centuries. These places have nothing in common except one thing. The humans who chose them refuse to leave. Every single one of these places tested the people who called it home, with cold, with heat, with isolation, with altitude, with danger, and in every case, the answer was the same. We stay, because this is ours. Maybe that is the thing this planet is trying to show us, in all its impossible, impractical, breathtaking extremity. That the places that demand the most of us are the ones that give us the most back. And here is something worth thinking about. We found 10 places today, 10, but the Earth has over 500 million square kilometers of surface. Scientists estimate that thousands of inhabited places have never been properly documented. Villages that appear on no map. Communities living in ways no journalist has reported. The world is not running out of secrets. We are just running out of patience for finding them. If you have made it this far in this video, you already have more patience than most. And that means you are exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Drop a comment below. Which of these 10 places would you visit if you could only choose one? Be honest. No shame if you pick the Underground Hotel in Australia. 50-degree heat is not a joke. And if you want to keep exploring, we have a lot more waiting for you. Places darker, stranger, and more beautiful than anything on this list. Hit subscribe, come with us. The world is bigger than you think, and we are just getting started. The air here doesn't feel like air. It has weight, texture. The temperature isn't a number, it's a presence, something that arrived before you and has no interest in whether you're comfortable. Sulfur and brine, and something beneath both that the body doesn't have a category for. You're standing inside a landscape that belongs to a different chapter of Earth's history, before plants, before oxygen, before almost everything that made this planet survivable. And it's still here, still exactly as hostile as it was 3 billion years ago. This episode is about places that were never designed for our standards, where the planet was doing something long before we arrived and is still doing it regardless of what we think. The planet doesn't explain itself. It just keeps going. If you're still following this far, stay with it, subscribe, and like the moment if you want to keep moving deeper into places like this, because this is only the beginning of what the planet is capable of showing. The photographs prepare you for the colors. They don't prepare you for the rest. The Danakil Depression sits more than 100 meters below sea level. Year-round temperatures above 34 degrees, past 50 in summer. The ground vents sulfurous gas through cracks. Hydrothermal pools spread across the surface in yellows, greens, deep orange rusts from sulfur and iron cooking in water that arrives from underground already at temperature. Erta Ale has maintained an open lava lake for over a century, not intermittently, continuously, a pool of molten rock glowing for 100+ years without cooling. The Afar people have cut salt here and loaded it onto camels for generations. Days of walking through volcanic gas in 50-degree heat for a few cents per block. They have a phrase for the midday heat. It translates as the air that eats, not hot, eating. One is a measurement, the other is a behavior. Iceland is coming apart. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge runs directly through its center, the Eurasian and North American plates pulling away from each other at 2.5 centimeters per year. The ground beneath your left foot is measurably moving away from the ground beneath your right. In Hákarlalur Valley, that pressure builds in underground water until Strokkur erupts every 6 to 10 minutes, reliably on schedule. Watch the pool beforehand. A translucent blue dome swells upward for 1 or 2 seconds before the whole column releases 15 to 40 meters straight up. Then roar, then steam, then stillness. Then it starts building again. The valley also has boiling mud pools at exactly 100 degrees Celsius, producing a deep, slow-popping sound that carries 20 meters in still air. Iceland has a phrase, "Þetta reddast." It will work out. The baseline attitude of a country whose ground erupts, floods, and separates on a schedule nobody chose. Nobody built this. That's the part that keeps not landing. 60 million years ago, lava cooled from the top down across this coastline. As basalt contracts, it fractures along lines of equal stress. The geometry of equal stress distribution in a contracting solid is hexagonal, same principle as honeycomb. Same reason you find this pattern in dried mud, in cracked basalt, on multiple continents. It's math. The rock solves automatically. The result? 40,000 columns, most 6-sided, fitting together with precision. The eye reads as designed. You know it wasn't built. You keep looking for the architect. The Atlantic hits the columns constantly, a low percussion felt in the chest before it registers as sound. The sea comes around the lower columns without warning. No barriers on most of the structure. The columns continue underwater. Nobody has mapped how far. A slab of quartzite, jutting 10 meters out from the cliff face of Mount Skjegedal, 700 meters above Lake Ringedalsvatnet. Carved by glacial pressure 10,000 years ago. The glacier left, the rock stayed. 27 kilometers round, trip 800 meters of elevation gain. In summer, there's still a line at the top. Trolltunga is fully exposed, nothing blocks the wind from any direction. Rangers turn groups back when conditions shift. Some days the ledge is genuinely unsafe, and the mountain gives no advance signal. But when Norway opens up, cold, clear the lake impossibly far below, standing at the edge, produces a conflict the body has no clean language for. The stomach pulls back. Something else holds the feet in place. Neither side wins. The rock has held through 10,000 winters. It will probably hold today. The word probably is load-bearing. On Middle Island off the south coast of Western Australia, the lake is pink. Not at sunrise, not in certain light. Fully saturated, opaque bubblegum pink at any time of day. Fill a bottle and the water is pink in the bottle. The cause is understood: algae and bacteria producing carotenoid pigments. The mechanism is explainable. What the explanation doesn't prepare you for is the contrast. The lake is separated from the Southern Ocean by a strip of eucalyptus forest 2 minutes wide, deep blue-gray ocean on one side, a lake the color of a confection on the other. From the air, it looks like a rendering error. Matthew Flinders documented it in 1802, wrote down the color, had nothing to add, sailed on. "200 years later, still the same color, still there." From the savanna floor, you can't see the top, just the wall vertical sandstone rising 400 meters and clouds sitting on it so consistently it looks structural. The summit plateau has been geologically isolated for over 1 billion years, long enough that everything living up there evolved in near-complete separation from below. Plants, frogs, insects, found nowhere else. Carnivorous plants, because the soil is too thin for photosynthesis alone. A world that rewrote its own rules. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote The Lost World from descriptions brought back by the first climbers in 1884. He never visited. The descriptions were apparently sufficient. The Pemon people have never climbed Roraima. It's where their creation narrative begins. You don't return to the beginning of things. You move forward from it. The trees are the first signal that something is different. The dragon blood tree grows only on Socotra, wide flat canopy, spread like an umbrella, held upside down trunk straight below it. The canopy intercepts fog and runs it down. On a dry island, the tree redirected moisture rather than waiting for rain. 6 million years of isolation produced it. A third of Socotra's plant species exist nowhere else on Earth. UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site specifically because what's here has no backup copy anywhere. The Socotri people speak a language that was never given a writing system passed parent to child, spoken only for longer than most written languages have existed. The dragon blood trees are dying. Climate shifts have altered the rainfall enough that seedlings can't establish. 6 million years in the making, possibly 50 years from going. The world's largest salt flat. Over 10,000 square kilometers of hardened mineral crust left when a prehistoric sea dried up 30,000 years ago. The surface is level enough that satellite altimeters are calibrated against it. Under the crust, lithium brine. Bolivia's deposits are among the largest anywhere. This flat, white, silent expanse has become one of the most geopolitically contested pieces of ground on the planet. The transition away from fossil fuels runs through this salt flat. After rain, a thin film of water covers the surface, and the horizon disappears. Clouds appear both above and below. A person 200 meters away appears to float on nothing. Ancient rock islands rise from the flat covered in cacti that grow 1 centimeter per year. Some have been growing since before Columbus. 3 flamingo species breed here in peak season. The image looks corrected. It isn't. Between 1730 and 1736, a volcano on Lanzarote erupted for nearly 6 continuous years. A quarter of the island buried under lava and ash. Villages went under. What remained was Timon fire, red-black rock in every direction. No soil, no sound. NASA has used it as a Mars surface analog. The craters still radiate heat. Hold your hand near any crack, and warmth rises. 40 centimeters down, 400 degrees Celsius. The National Park restaurant cooks food over a geothermal vent. No gas, no electricity, just ground heat from a volcanic event that ended 3 centuries ago. The artist Cesar Manrique built his home inside natural lava tubes on the island. Rooms in black basalt walls, a swimming pool inside a lava cavern. Spaces shaped around the rock rather than cutting through it. He believed architecture built against landscape is always losing the argument. Stay here a moment. In central Sulawesi, on a small island, inside a small lake, the water is clear, and the surface in early morning is completely flat. Fog sits on it until mid-morning. Fishing boats move through it, slowly wooden quiet oars, drawn through without urgency. No records, no extremes. The people near Paisu Pok have fished it for generations. After 9 places where the planet was boiling, erupting, separating, choosing impossible colors, holding a billion years of isolation, this is the segment that lets the previous 9 land. Not every place the planet made is trying to demonstrate something. The planet has been doing this for 4.5 billion years, running lava lakes before complex life existed, to observe them building basalt columns through geometry before anything walked on land, separating tectonic plates in Iceland before there was an Iceland. None of these places were made for us. The Danakil's heat didn't wait for us. Socotra's 6 million years of isolation happened without our knowledge of it. What we are in this context is recent arrivals, late to a planet already running systems for almost incomprehensible spans of time. The geyser erupts every 8 minutes whether anyone watches or not. The salt flat calibrates satellites it doesn't know exist. The planet doesn't explain itself. It just keeps going.